Greetings and salutations to everybody out there in podcast land. This is the Judo Chop Suey podcast, and I'm your host, Judo Dave Roman. Very good to be back behind the microphone again. I'm very excited for this episode because this is episode 20! Yeah! Woo! I am pumped up about that. 20 episodes. I didn't even think I'd make it to episode 2 when I first started this thing, and this has just been, again, I said it so many times, and I'll just say it again. This has been a tremendous experience for me. The podcast has grown in a way that I would have never, ever believed in a million years that I could have, I would have gotten this far. And I gotta tell you the truth. You know, normally I'm pretty hard on myself. I'm a guy that is very critical of myself. I push myself to higher standards. So I'm always down on myself. Not always down, like I'm upset with myself, but I just want to say that I'm very proud of myself and this particular podcast and in just being able to talk to so many listeners and via email and the interviews. And speaking of interviews, later on in this podcast, I'm going to be interviewing the founder of Freestyle Judo, Sensei Steve Scott. I'm very excited for that interview. I can't wait to get that started. But, you know, as always, I get a few housekeeping chores to get out of the way. But I want to express my appreciation for all of you that have been listening since the beginning. I want to express my appreciation for those of you who are listening for the first time. And if you are listening for the first time, I just want to let you know that this is a judo-specific podcast. It doesn't mean that I won't cover other grappling topics. For example, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. By the way, special shout-out to Os Nation out there. That's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, guys, if you don't know. So I just want to let you guys know that the focus of this podcast will be on judo, and that's my thing because I'm a judo black belt. I'm an assistant instructor, and I've been doing judo for a number of years now. But now this is my 11th year in judo, so I'm very excited about that. And speaking of which, in terms of judo, this weekend is the European Championships in judo. Now, I have not had an opportunity to watch any of these matches. I do know of one result in the under 52 kilo. It should come as no surprise as that Majlinda Kelmendi won that division. She took gold, and she's just, I mean, I've not watched her matches, but I'm sure she dominated that division like she's been dominating the judo scene for a number of years now. And I happen to believe that the best judo in terms of international competition, I believe the best judo is happening in the women's division, and I believe Kelmendi is the absolute best judoka in the world today. And that's including men, that's including even the great Japanese fighters like Hifumi Abe. I think in terms of the total package, the domination, the sheer will, the fighting ability, and dominating her division, I think Kelmendi is tops, even higher than Teddy Riner out of France. I know Riner has just had an incredible run over the past 8 years, but in terms of the face of international competitive judo, in my opinion, it's Kelmendi. And you guys may disagree with that. You're welcome to disagree with that. You're welcome to shoot me a tweet at La Vida Judoka. You're welcome to follow me on Facebook. Just do a search on Judo Chop Suey podcast. And you're welcome to follow me on Instagram, which is also La Vida Judoka. And if you're not following me on Instagram, what's the matter with you? I just got a follow from Nick Del Popolo. So, Nick, I don't know if you're a listener of the program. I'd love to have you on as an interview at some point in the future. But look, guys, if Nick is following me, why aren't you following me? I mean, honestly, my Instagram is awesome. I put videos of myself doing randori. I put videos of myself recording this hideous podcast. I put videos of myself spending time with family, my wife, my children. My Instagram's awesome. And if you don't think it's awesome, well then you. I'm kidding. I don't really mean that. But you know what I mean. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, harass me on Facebook. I love all of that. Now, excuse me a second. that wonderful water from my official JudoInside.com water bottle. Tell you what, Florida is getting nice and toasty around this time of year, heading into May. The humidity is kicking up a notch, and I come home from work and, I'm all sweaty. I can sweat in my car with the AC on when you're in Florida. That's how it can get down here. But I wouldn't have it any other way. So I needed to take a moment for myself to take a drink from the official JudoInside.com water bottle. Now, if you are interested in getting some information regarding on what's going on in the European Championships, if you don't want to wait for my podcast where I break it all down next weekend, feel free to go to JudoInside.com and take a look at all the updates there. Hans Van Essen is doing a great job following that particular tournament. And he's got his ear to the ground, just making sure anything that breaks in regards to that tournament, if you want to know who's won and who's lost, Hans got all of that in JudoInside.com. So I highly suggest you keep going to visit Hans at JudoInside.com. He's doing a great job there. Now, I was just talking about the heat in Florida and stuff. I want to give you guys an update on my judo club. We're still in the process of finding another space. It's it's tough. It's really tough. So I don't know if any of you guys have experienced how am I going to put this? This almost feels like the death of a club, because over the past week, the numbers have been dwindling down in terms of students showing up for class. I think last night I had really 3 students, and that's it. And I'm not the head instructor. The head instructor could not make it last night for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure why. That's really none of my business. But I'm there at a assistant capacity, and it was just 3 kids and myself and the other assistant instructor, and got to tell you, it was tough. And I'm not blaming the kids that didn't show. I'm not blaming the kids that showed. It's just tough when you go from what's typically 8 or 10 students in a class to like 2 or 3, and really one of the students is injured, and it's a tough situation. And it's tough for me because I've been through this before, where the club is like in its death throes, where you could practically hear the classic death rattle before it just completely dies. It's very discouraging, and I don't know what's going to happen there. And I've said it before. There's not really anything I can do on my end. I'm not an official coach. I'm just a club showdown. I cannot commit to being a full-time judo instructor. There's just no way. I have other life commitments, and the best that I can do is offer 2 or 3 times a week in volunteering. But any of the club administration, things like that, I don't have the experience. I don't have the know-how, and quite frankly, if I had to run a club on my own, I don't have the money to support that in the event that I couldn't get the club to grow. So this is kind of where we're at. I mean, maybe some of you feel like I'm being a quitter here. That's not the case. At least I don't think it's the case. There's only so much that I can do, and I'm going to be available. This club is important to me, and there's only so much I can do, and it's an unfortunate situation because it's not like we were given 3 to 5 months of notice ahead of time in regards to the jiu-jitsu club space that's closing. We were told just a couple of weeks ago, and it puts, whenever you get such relatively last minute notice, it's not like you can drum up more students in a month. I mean, if we only had 10 students and the club has been going, the club has been in existence for years and years and years, it's not like we're going to get an influx of students through some kind of mass multimedia or mass social media blitz or anything like that. So that's where we're at the club. And, I don't know what's going to happen. Quite frankly, I tend to be optimistic in a lot of things, but I'm not optimistic about this. It looks like the club may eventually close. Maybe the sensei will we'll be able to pull a rabbit out of his hat and find a place that we can train at. But again, it's not my club. I can't speak for the club. I can't go there in an official capacity as a, I can't go there and start looking for places to rent for him either, because I can't speak to some of the administration stuff that he may have to do with the national governing body. So it's an unfortunate situation. It's very discouraging, but hopefully it'll turn out for the best. I am committed to these kids. I'm committed to the club, but outside of being there in an assistant capacity, I just simply can't do more. I mean, if somebody out there feels that I can do more, and I'm not really considering all options, feel free to let me know if there's an idea or a solution that I'm overlooking. All right, I'd like to move on. So let's get to the next part of the show that I really, really like. Listener reaction. My favorite part of the podcast. This is the part of the podcast, for those who may be new, where I read your emails or your tweets or your responses to anything that I've done on previous episodes. I got a nice email from Jonah Ewell out in Oakland Judo. If you're out in Oakland, go ahead and give him a visit. He's got a very nice club out there. He's responding to the bit of sad news that my club may be at large in a couple of weeks if we don't find another place to train. And I went over that on the last episode of this wonderful podcast. But he writes me an email, states, "Hey, I'm listening to your podcast. That sucks about your judo club. Don't worry too much. I'm sure you'll find another place." One thing I've learned when your dojo is rebuilding or regular building mode is you have to keep your costs low. It's better to cut down on 1 or 2 days a week at odd times than to take out a lease on a place you really can't afford yet. Yeah. Completely agreed with you, Jonah. And that's kind of the situation where we're at. We're having to find that we can't really get more than 2 days a week. But continuing on. The people that are really committed will find a way to come at those odd times and days. And if you make sure that those classes are really super badass, the word will spread. You can build from there. One of the most successful and oldest judo clubs around here, San Jose Buddhist, only practices Monday and Thursday. And I'm pretty sure the Buddhist church doesn't have a dedicated mat room, so they lay out the mats for each practice. Keep your head up, Tiger. Jonah, I really appreciate the email and encouragement. It comes at a time where, I been feeling, like I said just a few minutes ago, just feeling a little bit down about the club. And at the bottom of this email was a link to a YouTube video to Kickboxer. Now, he must remember, and I'm sure some of you remember, probably most of you don't realize it, I'm a huge JCVD fan, Jean-Claude Van Damme. And this video, I was feeling down when I read the email. I was like, shucks, man, what am I going to do about the club? Or what's going to happen here? And then all of a sudden, I click the video, the music kicks in, and I'm like, hey, it's Jean-Claude and Kickboxer. So I'm like, cracking a little smile. This is kind of cool. And then I see, this is Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's Kurt Sloan in this movie, and he's training with his brother, and then his brother's fighting Tong Po. And then you see his brother his back gets broken by Tong Po because he's a cheater, and Van Damme's like, no, and his back cracks, and then he goes to this sensei out in the middle of Thailand, and he starts to learn the old traditional ways of kickboxer. There's Tong Po ripping the belt, Jean-Claude punches the wall, there's a sensei playing the pan flute, and Jean-Claude training underwater. He's doing the split kicks and the flying kicks, and he beat up a couple of guys in the bar, and like here I'm going, yeah, this is awesome, man. And then he kicks down a tree, and he's punching this thing that's like a punching bag, except it doesn't move. Oh, and there's a sensei. He drops the big fruit thing onto his stomach from about 100 feet up, and he's like, give me more. And then he finally fights Tong Po, and he's fighting with the glass on the fists, and then this is the part where Tong Po says like the most offensive thing I have ever heard in a movie, and I've never heard anything worse than in my life.
You bleed like my lead. My lead. Good.
Then you got people saying, Natsukao, Natsukao, Natsukao. And as if he didn't have anything left to fight for, fighting for his pride, fighting for his brother. Now he finds out about his girlfriend, Mai Li and Tong Po, and he gets really mad, and he starts fighting and just really beats up Tong Po, and then he gets to Freddie Lee and kicks him in the face, and it just, this movie is just awesome if you haven't watched it. It is, if Iron Fist was half as cool as this movie, I would have put it over to the moon. But this movie, oh, there's Jean-Claude again punching Tong Po in the face. It's just a sequence and just, this is an awesome movie. You gotta watch this if you've never watched Kickboxer before. A Jean-Claude Van Damme classic. Jonah, thank you so much. This really uplifted my spirits because I tell you, I was a little bit down. And then at the end of this video, I felt like I wanted to go out to the European Open and just win gold. I was just so pumped up, and I was like, man, I gotta get to a judo club and like choke somebody out because this video made me pumped up. So anyway, I know I'm going a little crazy here, but man, this video just like totally just gave me a testosterone boost, all natural and everything. So, and I don't even have a testosterone problem, but right now I'm just like totally raging. It's incredible stuff. So anyway, Jonah, thank you very much for the video. Continuing on with my next email. Whew, my goodness. All right. The next email I want to read truly fascinated me. Now, this is a longer email, but this is very important for me to read from start to finish. So, here it goes. Dave, this is Kiyoshi, blogger over at judofan.com. Thanks for your podcast. I enjoy listening. Now, this is me here. I checked out this blog. It's really worthwhile checking out. This is a very interesting blog from a fellow who is over in Japan. So this is, as far as I know, my first confirmed Judo Chop Suey podcast listener from Japan. So continuing on, I just wanted to comment on your number 16 podcast where you talk about judo losing popularity in Japan. Over the last few years, Japanese judo has been rocked by a number of scandals, including athlete abuse, mismanagement of funds, and accidental deaths in the dojo. They have been so serious that there was a change of members on the executive board at the AJJF, the creation of a new committee aimed at supporting female athletes, and just yesterday, the AJJF released a 3-part series on their YouTube channel addressing judo-related head trauma. I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but the judo population is declining fairly quickly. It is hard to say why, though. One theory I have is that compared to a few decades ago, Japan has introduced a lot more sports into its school system. The economic prosperity of the 70s and 80s made it possible for Japanese people to participate in all kinds of sports that weren't previously possible. Based on my own observations, I would also theorize that the physical and mental abuse that is very common in Japan has a lot to do with the decline. Corporal punishment and verbal abuse are pretty guaranteed at high-level programs. This topic is fairly important to me as a coach experiencing a dangerous decline in athletes I can recruit onto my team. Even some of the really major programs have really suffered with a lack of recruits in recent years. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Sorry I don't have time to research the subject a little bit more and give you some statistics. Thanks for your podcast. I enjoy listening in. Regards, Kiyoshi. Kiyoshi, thank you very much for this email. This is really fascinating stuff. Now, for those of you who have a short-term memory or maybe bonked on the head, a couple of episodes ago, I commented on Marius Visor's Twitter Q&A where somebody had posed a question to Mr. Visor about why why judo in Japan is declining in popularity. Now, Kiyoshi really gave some insights here that I just was not privy to. And this is all very interesting to me, and I really think it's a sad commentary on what judo has become in Japan if Kiyoshi's point of view is accurate, which I don't have any reason to believe that it's not accurate. It almost sounds like it's not much different than how, say, football programs in Florida used to be ran 20, 30 years ago. Not so much the verbal abuse, but they were really, really hardcore programs at the Pee Wee level. I mean, when I say Pee Wee level, we're talking about, 9 and 10-year-olds doing these severe conditioning drills with lack of water, and you just a bunch of bad coaches out there, really pushing their kids. Now, granted, this kind of approach to training has produced a lot of high-level athletes in football out of Florida, and clearly over the past, really the history of competitive judo, Japan has been a dominant force on the competitive scene. Now, that is not me condoning any sort of abuse or negative practices done by Japanese judo officials, but I am saying that what's interesting to me is that I always believe there is a better way to get the most out of your athletes than yelling at them and saying demeaning things and abusing them. I believe that a good coach can get the best out of their athletes through positive reinforcement and being positive and being a good teacher. It's just history tends to show that the programs that are super tough tend to be very successful. But again, I can't imagine these days somebody like Kosei Inui being verbally abusive to the athletes that he's coaching currently. I can't imagine him being that way, but maybe you have an old guard within Japan that sticks to the good old boy traditional sort of way, as I would put it, and they don't want to let go of old practices in favor of better coaching techniques and better coaching approaches and such. So this is all very interesting. If anybody else out there has firsthand experience with this, shoot me an email and let me know what your experiences are. Now, I have seen videos posted online of certain coaches in the U.S. community that are very tough on their students. And again, it's not about being soft with your students. I believe that you can get the most out of your students as a coach without being demeaning, without resorting to corporal punishment, without resorting to embarrassing students or doing things like hazing or things like that. I believe there's a better way to get the most out of your athletes. And now, those people that I'm criticizing or shedding light on this subject, they would probably say to me, well, who have you coached at a high level? And you know what? You would have a point. I have not coached anybody at a high level, but I still believe when you look at the best coaches out there that they're not sitting there, inflicting corporal punishment on their players. I mean, look at the greatest coach in NBA history, Phil Jackson. And I know you Celtics fans will cringe at that, but look, Phil Jackson is one of the most successful coaches in NBA history. I can't imagine the Zen master being verbally abusive to his athletes. Now, it's been well known that he's known how to get the best out of his athletes by pushing so many buttons. For example, I know that a lot of people felt that Horace Grant back in the 90s was Phil Jackson's whipping boy, but Phil Jackson knew how to do and say the right things to get his players to perform at the highest level. And I think a coach can do that without being verbally abusive, without being a bully, and without being physically abusive either. You have going back to basketball again, you have the Bob Knight way of doing things, and you have the Phil Jackson way of doing things. And with more modern NBA coaches, you've got the Steve Kerr way of doing things. And they're producing, these coaches are experiencing a lot of success or have experienced a lot of success. So again, I think there's a better way to go about it. So going back to what I was saying before, Kiyoshi, thank you very much for your email. Very interesting observations. And if you have it, feel free to contribute anytime to this podcast, and I would greatly appreciate that. All right, we're 24 minutes or so into this podcast, and I'm sure some of you are like, get on with it already, you mother, stop talking. All right, yeah, I get ya. I promised Sensei Steve Scott, and there's the music. Here's his intro. Here he is. Ladies and gentlemen, from Kansas City, Missouri, Mr. Steve Scott. Steve, can you hear me? How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Dave. Thanks for talking with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the Judo Chop Suey podcast. This is a unique opportunity for me because I've been wanting to interview you for quite some time, and I know a lot of the listeners have brought up questions to me about freestyle judo and the scoring system, especially in light of the changes with the International Judo Federation's rule set starting in 2010, and then the new rule set starting in 2017. So, but before we get into all of that, tell the listeners about yourself. How you started judo, who your sensei was, how long you've been doing judo, and then from there, talk a little bit about your Welcome Mat Judo Club.
Well, I appreciate you asking me. Well, I guess I'm a bit of an old guy now. I'm approaching 65 real quickly here. I've been in judo since 1965. My first sensei was a man named Jerry Sweat here in Kansas City, Missouri. I still live in Kansas City, Missouri.
Gotcha.
Like my wife and I like to say, we've traveled the world. We always come back to Kansas City. I don't know why, but we seem to like it here. but Jerry Sweat was my first sensei. He was trained at the Kodokan. He's a Nidan from the Kodokan. He was also a Sandan in Aikido, and he spoke Japanese fluently. And I learned good, solid Kodokan judo under Jerry.
Wow.
Unfortunately, after about three and a half years, he quit teaching. A lot of things were going on in his life, and he moved on. And I then trained under a very good man named Ken Regeneter, who was really involved in jiu-jitsu, the old Danzanryu or Kodokan jiu-jitsu, as well as judo. He was much better. We're not going to say much better. He enjoyed more jiu-jitsu than did judo. He was a Sandan in judo. But he was the guy that really got me going in good katami waza, good ground fighting. He emphasized that in his club. And it was Ken that suggested to me one day on the mat, he said, "Have you ever heard of Sambo?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, it's that Russian kind of judo or jiu-jitsu or something." He said, "You'd like that because, it's just your style is kind of a more of a ground fighting style." I evolved under him that way. So I tried this Sambo a few years later back in this course. This is back in the days before there was an internet.
Right.
And I sought out, I contacted the AAU Wrestling Committee, which was in charge of Sambo at that time. And that was about 1974, 75. And I finally ended up hooking up with a wonderful man named Ivan Olson, God rest his soul, out of San Diego, California. He was an old wrestler who had been the AAU wrestling coordinator for Sambo, because Sambo had become one of the three international styles of grappling or wrestling under FILA, the international governing body for wrestling, with freestyle, Greco, and then Sambo. So anyway, he directed me to, of all places, a Scotsman who was living in Rogers, Arkansas at the time. Rogers, Arkansas was about a 6 or 7 hour drive south of me, and the fellow's name was Morris Allen, who had won the World Sambo Championship in 1975, I think in Minsk. And he was a Scotsman, and an old millionaire had opened a big sports center called Ichiban Training Center, and of all places, Northwest Arkansas. And he hired top quality coaches to come in, like rotate them in every year or two. And while I think Morris was there maybe about 2 years or so, I can't remember, but starting in early 76 or so, I started training with Morris Allen in Sambo, which he opened my eyes to a larger world. It was just, he was also, by the way, Morris was also a high-ranking man in judo, and he wrestled in, I think, freestyle wrestling for Great Britain in the Olympics. So he was a well-rounded grappler, and I just gained a ton of knowledge from Morris, just a brief time I had to train with him. About that time, a period of time, I was learning and growing. I was a young man. I had started my judo club, the Welcome Mat Judo Club, in 1969 as a senior in high school. And,
wow.
And so how it came about is rather interesting, I believe. I would hope others find it interesting. But when I was training with Ken Regeneter at his dojo, 4 or 5 of us lived in the same area in Kansas City, South Kansas City, and we would drive over. It was about a 30-minute drive over to train at Ken's dojo every evening. And he only had judo 3 times a week. So we wanted to, have some more time on the mat. So Ken actually loaned us an old roll-up 10 by 10 horsehair canvas covered mat that we lugged around, and we were high school seniors, and it was in this one kid's garage for a while. It was in my backyard for a while, wherever. And I finally found a community center near my house, and I asked the lady, I said, who ran the community center, I said, would you mind if we keep our mat here? Could we come here and practice our judo? And she said, I'll let you boys do that if you promise to teach a judo class for me one night a week. And I said, well, we can do that. Sure. I mean, but here we are, 18-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Hardly know any judo really, but we said, well, yeah. So we got a free place to train. And that was actually the start of the Marlboro Community Center is the name of the place. And we started it there, the Welcome Mat Club in 1969. It kind of developed almost by accident, but it developed. And some way or the other, I've been teaching judo and sambo and of course, jiu-jitsu ever since. And because I ended up getting a job with the Kansas City, Missouri Parks and Recreation, making that my career. I stayed with them almost 37 years. So wherever I went, wherever community center I worked at, I became a director, kind of like a principal of a high school, and whatever community center I worked at, I did three things. I started a judo club. I opened up a library for the kids to use. And I also opened up a weight room because back then in the 70s and 80s, you didn't see a lot of weight rooms in a lot of facilities, but we did that too. So those were three things I always wanted to do for the kids in whatever neighborhood I was working. So from that basis, from that genesis through the Parks and Recreation system, I ended up developing a very good club, and I was fortunate to travel in many places. And I actually met my wife Becky, who went on to be a Pan American World Sambo champion, by the way. I met her at a judo tournament in 1973, and so we both liked judo, and we kind of struck up a friendship, and we started dating. And a couple of years later, we ended up getting married. So, and we've been married almost 42 years now. So, that judo has been a major part of my life. I often say judo was my ticket out. It was my ticket out of just being an everyday guy.
Sure.
Because of judo, I developed discipline to go to college and be somebody better. And I was able to see the world through, mainly as a coach, as a judo coach and sambo coach. So it really gave me a wonderful edge on, I think, a lot of other people. And I've tried to use that judo as a ticket out for every kid I've tried to coach ever since, an adult. So that's kind of been the basis for my reason for doing judo and being in judo. And I imagine there are a lot of people who have the same story as me, but this is my particular story. So that's kind of a background of where I am.
That's fascinating stuff. I did not know that you also had an extensive background in sambo. That's very interesting, and I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit more. And okay. Because I've done a little bit of reading. I did go to your site for the Freestyle Judo org site, and we'll definitely get to all of that. But I didn't really realize how influential sambo was for you as well.
Yeah, extremely, extremely influential. I'll tell you what, Morris Allen, I believe, is one of the best coaches I've certainly ever worked with. I think anybody else who knows Morris, he's living in Virginia now, and he's still active. I just think the world of him, and he really he told me something very, very important, and it changed my life in terms of judo, and also how I thought about a lot of things. Because up to the point I started training with Morris, I tried to fit that cookie cutter approach. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'4", I weigh about 240.
Sure.
And he watched me. He was training with me, and he used to give me plenty of thumpings. I'll tell you, the guy is super good. But he would tell me, he said in a Scottish brogue of his, I can't duplicate it, but he said, you've got to understand, you've got to make your technique work for you. You don't have to work for the technique. In other words, don't try to mold your body into some preconceived notion you think it should look like. He said, learn the fundamentals, yes, and then take that move, take that technique, and mold it to fit like you, like you're buying. You don't just buy a suit off the rack. Have it tailor made for you. And that struck a chord in me, and it made a whole lot of sense. And I've been using that as one of the very cornerstones of my coaching ever since. To make your judo, make your sambo, whatever it is, make that technique work for you. And that was wonderful advice, and I try to give that to all my students. So,
Now, speaking of students, what is your current club makeup like? Because when I see your YouTube videos, which, by the way, I gotta say, I think your YouTube channel is fantastic. I hope you keep up the good
thanks.
work. I think it's fabulous. I'm a big fan of it. I know you've got a lot of subscribers, but so when I see your page, I happen to see a lot of adults at your club. So what is your current club makeup in terms of children versus adults? You have more adults than children, or vice versa?
Right. Well, right now we have two primary locations for Welcome Mat. The one I'm at, where you see a lot of my videos done, is Kansas City is a large metropolitan area, like a lot of cities are, of course.
Right.
And the location where I do most of my video work is in the south part of Kansas City at our club in metropolitan or suburban Kansas City, South Kansas City, and that's run by Derek Darling, one of my really good black belts, who is very good at judo, but his specialties are really sambo and jiu-jitsu and submission grappling, that type of thing. He also has a lot of Muay Thai. You'll see in a lot of backgrounds, there's a boxing ring back there. A lot of guys are doing Muay Thai in the background. But at that location, we have a lot of adults. We probably have about 20 to 30, for the American Midwest, that's a fairly good sized club. We have about 20 to 30 adults on a regular basis train with us. And that's what you primarily see when you see my videos on YouTube. And now Kenny Brink, who is one of my outstanding students, I started him when he was 8. He's now well into his 40s. He's a superb, great judo coach. We're really the main part of our judo club. And I would consider him our head judo coach now at Welcome Mat. And in fact, the community center where Kenny started his judo with me in the Northland area, the Kansas City area, north of the river in Kansas City, at that community center, I was the manager there for 13 years before I retired. And Kenny, of course, was one of my standout athletes. And when I retired, I pretty much said, I'm backing off, I'm going into other things right now. And I really kind of let Kenny take over the program. And he's done a wonderful job. And he has about, on an average night, he practices 4 nights a week or 4 times a week. It's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. He averages about 40 kids at a practice, which for the American Midwest is pretty darn good. I think he has about 50 or more actually enrolled, but he can count on just about 40 kids at every practice. So, and he's got mostly kids, but he also has about 10 or 12 adults. And I make sure I get up to Kenny's practice, once a week or so, maybe at least twice a month at least. He does such a good job. I don't want to bother him really, but so he has the main thrust of the kids program, which is our real development program for those kids coming up. So we actually have 2 primary locations for Welcome Mat. The one you see me at primarily is most adults, and Kenny works mostly kids. I coached kids for about 30 years. And honestly, at my age, I just don't have the patience for them anymore.
I can, you know what? I can understand that completely now that I'm assisting with kids as well. I do enjoy it a lot, but I think there's a big difference when you have adults who really want to be there versus kids who may be made to be there. So I'm with you on that. Yeah. Now, so we're going to get specifics to freestyle judo rules and such like that. But before we go into that, I want to ask you one question. Since you have been involved in judo for over 50 years, what is your opinion on the state of judo right now versus where it was when you started? I know there is not nearly as many practicing adults worldwide compared to 50 years ago. Right. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because culturally, America and certainly the world has changed. And when I, again, started judo in 1965, judo was pretty much the only game in town. Karate was still a very new thing. And I know I'm mispronouncing karate, so it's karate. I understand that. So please, purists, don't hammer me. But I'll call it karate, being the Midwesterner that I am. But it was a new thing. And when I started judo here in the Kansas City area, and this was not a heavy judo populated area, we could go to a local tournament, and I did with great regularity as a boy. I competed every chance I got. We would probably have anywhere from about 200 or so people, maybe 250 in one of our regional championships, which was, pretty good numbers. And those were just the competitors. And when at our show, we probably had about 100 members. It was fairly large, especially for Kansas City being in the American Midwest. So, but it was the only game in town. Now, as things have changed, and we've got Taekwondo, we've got Kung Fu, we've got Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, all these other martial arts have come on the scene. The water is I don't want to say muddied, but there's more opportunities for different things for people to do, and so that's caused a drop in the numbers. But also, I think our culture is softening a bit. My friend John Salo likes to call us. He said, "Remember back in the '60s when the hippies were the counterculture?" Yeah, sure, John. He said, "Well, now we're the counterculture. We're the guys doing stuff that's really hard stuff, these throws and these arm locks and things like this." He said, "This isn't what a lot of people like to do." And so I think our culture has changed to some degree. I don't want to just entirely blame our culture, because I think there's some other things endemic in the judo community that we've done wrong. And and I don't want to hammer anybody. I don't want to, be too hard on anyone. But I really think, having seen how things have developed over the years, or evolved, let's say the better word for it, we don't market judo like we should. We could learn a lot from our brothers and sisters in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Taekwondo. We really could. We could learn a lot from them. And how we market, how we promote, how we present what judo is to the public. Judo is really an exciting thing. It really is. It's a cool thing to see all those big body slam throws, and and it's scientific, and it's the kind of stuff that really keeps me up at night. I know I'm an old geek about it, but it really does keep me up at night thinking about how the body moves and how I can better manipulate for an arm lock or whatever it may be. And it is an exciting thing, and we just don't present that well to the public. We just don't do a very good job of it. And I also think another thing that's really hurt us in our American, we Americans here in the United States tend to give greater respect and legitimacy towards sports which are a sport in a high school or college. If it's an NCAA sport, now judo being an Olympic sport has a great amount of dignity to it, a great amount of recognition, so on, which is a wonderful thing. But beyond that, we Americans will, the fact is it's not an NCAA sport, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is this has really hurt judo. Look at high school wrestling, college wrestling. You have millions, well over 1 million wrestlers in this country. Just off the top of my head, that's probably a good guess. But, it is a scholastic, it is a high school, it is a collegiate sport. And judo, unfortunately, never became a collegiate sport. There have been opportunities in the past. Apparently, the people in power of judo back whenever it happened turned it down. It is a club sport. A lot of colleges have clubs, right? But it's not an official NCAA sport, Division I, II, or III. It's not an NAIA sport. It's not so there's no organization that is giving judo the legitimacy like it does basketball, like the NCAA gives wrestling or basketball or tennis. Name any sport. So if we could be in the colleges and high schools, if a kid could get a college scholarship to go play judo at Iowa State or wherever, and not just like in wrestling, we would have a lot more people coming out for judo. So I think that's really been a hindrance to us. Because remember, the founder of judo, Jigoro Kano, was an educator. He went on to become the minister of education for Japan. And it would just seem to be a natural thing for us to be involved in the educational process of young men and women in the United States. So that's a shame. And I think that's been probably the primary reason judo hasn't caught on in this country, where other sports have, So that's just my take on it, though.
Agreed. No, I think that's a very good point. So now let's get to the meat of this interview here.
Sure.
Tell me about freestyle judo. Now, I've done some reading on this, but a lot of listeners out there are familiar with it. But so what I would like you to do is give the listeners a high-level overview of what freestyle judo is, and what do you think freestyle judo adds to judo today that does not exist under, say, the current rule set?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want everyone to know that freestyle judo is not a new style of judo. I'm not so arrogant that I would come and say I'm doing something better than Kano did, because certainly that's not the case. It's not a different martial art. It's judo. There is only one judo, and that's the judo founded by Jigoro Kano, the Kodokan, in 1882. So I want everyone to put. If anyone thinks we're trying to start a new style of judo or do something, we're not. Freestyle judo is simply judo using logical and common sense set of contest rules. That's really what it is. A good example, one of our strong freestyle judo coaches, Vincente Dinjani down in Dallas, he's one of our referees as well. He had his father, who was an old-time judo guy from New Orleans, come up when James and Patty Wall put on the Sambo Nationals a couple of years ago, last 3 years actually, but in the Baton Rouge area. So Vincente had his dad drive up and take a look at the tournament. And he said, Dad, here's what I want you to do. I want you to come up. I want you to watch the tournament and tell me what you think of it. And so his dad did. So afterwards, Vincente said, Dad, what'd you think of the tournament? He said, what's the big deal? It's judo. And Vincente said, bingo, that's the point. It's just judo. And we're just using rules that allow wider and more fully developed technical base of judo. It has so many things to it. Judo technically rich and diverse, never invented by mankind. It really is. When you look at what we have in judo compared to, say, some of the other sports, there's so many different things you can do to the human body. It's just simply amazing. And if we have a set of rules that allow for the full and complete use of as many technical skills that are safe as possible, then that's a solid set of rules. And when I wrote the contest rules, and again, freestyle judo, again, is not a style of judo. It's just judo using a set of what I think are more logical contest rules. And when you look at, I'm an old phys ed guy, so, I'm kind of going back to my college days when I started writing the rules of freestyle judo in 2007 and 2008. A set of rules for any sport, not just judo, for any sport, should have 5 primary factors. And the first one is to promote and codify sportsmanship. Well, that's obvious, but that's important. Number 2, the rules of whatever sport it is should provide a fair, objective, and understandable means of scoring. So there should be an objective point system, the objective value scoring system, and understandable to the public. Number 3, provide for safe play. Make sure that there's safety involved. There are techniques banned in judo for safety reasons. Like Kani Basami is one of them, Kawazugaki, such things as that. Number 4, a set of rules of any sport should encourage technical and tactical skill development. So the rules should be written in such a way to allow the athletes and the coaches who teach those athletes to do the fullest extent of judo or whatever sport it is possible safely. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the rules. And number 5, and I think one of the most important things is any set of rules for any sport should encourage and promote a healthy lifestyle. That's why, drugs are banned and, various activities are not, are frowned upon and not allowed. So those are the 5 things.
Why did you start these rules in 2007, 2008?
Right.
It was my understanding, I could have understood maybe after the major rule change on the leg grabs that you decided to do something different or present a different style of competition. But I was actually surprised to hear that you started writing these rules back in 2007. What is it about that particular period of time in your judo career where you felt that you wanted to provide a different opportunity or different style of competition?
Well, I kind of saw, and I'm certainly, I don't have a crystal ball, but I kind of saw where things were going in a way. When the IJF cut the time limit from Osai Kome down from 30 to 25, I said, why is that? Why did that happen? Well, there was maybe some people had good, adequate answers to that, but I never heard one really. And then I saw, things were, you talk to referees, they're going to stop doing this, stop doing that. And I saw also where judo was headed, and I knew it was going to have to come to a head. We saw probably about the 8 or 10 years prior to the actual big changes in 2010, where fundamentally judo was becoming wrestling in a judo gi.
Absolutely.
I looked, it was losing its actual nature or essence. And I knew the IJF had to do something.
Yes.
And what they did, I applaud them for saying, well, you can't just dive in and, jump at, grab at legs and do all this other stuff. I applaud them for that. But I think they could have come out a little bit differently like we did. I mean, again, I'm not saying we have a better idea, but we tried something different. It seems to be working for us. We stopped a lot of the leg. In fact, we stopped all the leg grabbing and diving for legs by simply making a rule saying that the contestants, the two athletes on the mat, have to first have a grip of each other, have to have both hands on the opponent before they actually hit the morote gari or hit the kataguruma or hit the ashidori, whatever it might be, the leg grab type move. You have to actually have contact with your opponent. So that prevented a lot of that bending over and diving stuff, which we saw a lot. And then also, I also saw where I thought the IGF was going a bit overboard because we saw all the bent over negative passive judo action where it looked like two rams butting heads. Yeah. And I thought they didn't handle that as well as they could have. We handled it by allowing our referee, and this may sound odd to some people, but I right from the start, having been influenced heavily by Sambo and wrestling, we allow our referees, our mat officials, to talk to the athletes and tell them, posture up. We use the phrase posture up, stand up. And when they hear the word posture up, they know their posture's too bent over. They got to stand up. We'll say you're too bent over, red or white, whatever the color of the belt they're wearing, and you've got to stand up. So that makes them have more upright, well-postured judo. And as a result, their hips are more in play from a technical aspect of it. You're seeing more skillful movements with, more uchimatas, more seinages, that type of thing. And we've really done away with a lot of the leg grabbing and, what looked to be like wrestling in a judo gi. So we did two primary things. We let the referees talk to the athletes and give them warnings for standing upright. And we were strict about, penalizing athletes who were bending over excessively in, too far jigotai.
How did you decide on this scoring system, and what was it that influenced you on this scoring system?
Yeah, well, in a nutshell, what we did in freestyle judo, I think a thing that makes judo is the ippon, the single 1 point, the big score, whether it be from an arm lock or a throw or whatever technique. Ippon is the ultimate of what we want to do in judo. And so I want to give every opportunity to every athlete a chance to get that ippon in every match that he or she fights in. So that being said, ippon is an ippon. It's still let's take for throws. It's a throw primarily, on the back or side with control and force, just like the IJF. And then we have, of course, the wazari, almost a technique, almost the ippon, I thought a numerical scoring system would make for a more, I don't want to say aggressive match, but allow the athletes more room to do a lot of different things. And it's easy to understand. If you're going to a judo tournament and you see the score is 7-6, one guy's got 7, one guy's got 6. And if you don't, and I know they have the different numbers now for 100 or 10 or whatever, but, in the old scoring system, it was just a W or a U or, for Yuko. People didn't know what that meant. So what we did was by having introducing numerical scores to the points assessment, it made it easier for people to understand who was winning or losing. So that's why we went with the numerical scores. It's a matter of, I think again, to make it understandable. One of the rules I had about scoring a match objectively and understandably. There you go. But so a wazari would be with 4 points. It'd be the same as a wazari. A yuko, like what we all know a yuko to be, and all us old timers remember what it was for many years. That's worth 2 points. a koka. And again, we're showing our age by showing koka because a lot of young guys don't know what a koka is anymore. But a koka was the small minor score where you throw primarily on the buttocks or the side or whatever it may be, with control. It is a throw with control, and that's worth 1 point. So our scoring for throwing techniques is ippon, wazari is worth 4, yuko is worth 2, a koka is worth 1. Now, what we also introduced, which I thought made for a more interesting match and made a more competitive match, was, if you remember the rules, especially in the old days, I actually saw a match, an egregious example. I saw back when the kokas were first introduced back in the mid to late 70s, I saw a guy at the Nationals get 10 kokas on his opponent. His opponent had 1 yuko. Okay. This guy, in a 5-minute contest, threw his other opponent 9 more times than he was thrown. Okay.
Right.
He got the guy who got the 1 yuko early in the match kept his lead, ran like a rabbit, but still there was not enough. He got thrown, and there had to be more. Those were terrible calls of yuko or koka, but the guy who got 10 kokas still lost. So the guy who actually threw the other guy around like a rag doll actually lost the match, and it stayed with me for a long time. I thought, well, if we could have a cumulative scoring, in other words, if I throw somebody for a wazari and get 4 points, and then I throw him for another wazari and get 4 points, it doesn't just end the match. I have 8 points now. Now I still have to fight because we have a 12-point spread, because we've tinkered with this quite a bit, and we came up and I got this originally from Sambo, but when there's a 12-point spread, there's a definite difference. There's a definite best word is difference between the two athletes' level of ability. And 8 points don't always do it. 8 points is a bit too close.
Sure.
So I tinkered with this a lot in a lot of our local and regional terms before we actually wrote it into the rules. But let's say I'm competing with a guy and I'm wearing red and he's white. I'm red. I throw him for a wazari. I have 4 points. He comes back and he starts annihilating me, and he gets me for a 1-pointer, a 2-pointer, another 2-pointer, another 2-pointer. He racks up 6 or 7, 8 points of scores because, I got that maybe a lucky shot, or maybe I just didn't protect my lead well, whatever it may be. He's now able to catch up in the score. So I can't just sit on a big score and hope to win. So what we've done by doing that, by not allowing an athlete to sit on a big score and wait, maybe get a few penalties and still win it, we've made him have to continue to hustle to protect that score. So it's made for a more aggressive, more interesting match. Technically and tactically, it makes judo a lot more interesting when you have a cumulative scoring like that.
The pawn still trumps everything, correct?
Correct, yes.
What about osai komi? Is there scoring for osai komi? If I read the rules correctly, I believe a 12 margin of 12 points wins it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, a 12-point spread will win the match. It could be 12-0, 17-5, whatever the score may be. The 12-point spread is the same as the old days of getting 2 wazaris, ippon. It's a superior win. Again, a good rule set that uses that is Sambo. They've gone to an out 8-point spread, but there used to be 12. You see that in wrestling when there's I think in college wrestling, if there's a 15-point, I might be wrong on this, but if there's a 15-point spread, they stop the match and give one athlete a superior win or whatever. Same with international wrestling. So there is precedent for that, and there's a good reason for that, because if you're outscoring a guy 12 points more, you're just pounding him. It's kind of a mercy rule.
Now, if I understand correctly, if you hold down a person for 20 seconds, that's 4 points.
Correct.
So could I hold a person down for a minute and get 12 points if I'm thoroughly dominating the person I'm competing against? Can a person win in that way?
No, that's a good question, asked often, actually. Here's what we do on the osai komi. And again, we wrote the rules in such a way to make it, we wanted to encourage more aggressive newaza, katamiwaza ground fighting. So I've got my opponent. I'm holding him in osai komi. I get my 20 seconds. The referee, by the way, can talk to me. He's right there, right right by me. He's not standing off on the edge of the mat. He's right in front of me. We train our referees to do that. And the referee will tell me, I'm wearing red. So let's say I'm wearing the red belt. He'll say, red, 4 points. Go for your submission. Now, the referee has just instructed me that I've got 4 points for my osaikomi. Now, my job is to go for a submission, arm lock or a choke. Okay. He will give me a period of about 10, 15 seconds or so. I've got him written in the rule book. I don't have him right off the top of the head, but he will give me a period of time to try to affect some type of a submission technique, either an arm lock or a strangle. And now, if the opponent just continues to lay there, obviously the guy knows on the bottom he's been had. He's got 4 points against him. He's going to get arm locked or strangled if he doesn't move. What happens often, we almost always see it, the guy who got pinned is now fighting like a banshee to get out of trouble. And he's going to work everything he can. And me being the guy on top and getting the osaikomi points, I'm working really hard to get that submission. So what we've written in the rules is a way of encouraging the athletes to go from to win by some type of submission technique, where we finalize it, we get the ippon like that. Now, let's say I've got it. The referee's instructed me, you've got 4 points, go for the submission. I've tried. It becomes a scramble. It's even up. We're engaged in another newaza situation, and there's no, I can't get the arm lock, but he gets out of trouble. And the referee's going to allow that to continue, that newaza bout there, that period there, to continue as long as progress is being made by one or both athletes, whatever it may be. We're actually trying, we're progressing towards something. And what happens sometimes is the guy on the bottom, the guy white, I'm red, he gets out, a scramble ensues, and he gets out of my control, and I may get control of him again. And let's say if that happens, he turns back over on his base, elbows and knees to try to get away, and I can now turn him onto his back and get him into another osaikomi. Now, one thing we do in freestyle judo rules is we will give points for turnovers, breakdowns, guard passes, or guard sweeps. We give 1 point for that.
Okay.
Because that's kind of like the equivalent to a koka, only for katame waza. And so what'll happen, we may end up in a scramble. I turn him back over onto his back. Referee will award 1 point for my turnover or breakdown. And then if I pin him again, I can repin him, and he'll call osaikomi again. So I may repin him and have a chance to get another 4 points. So now we've seen really aggressive, risk-taking, assertive style of newaza that we certainly need to see if we want to win, if we want to develop our athletes to be really, really good technicians on the mat. So by that rule, by that series of things I just described, we are actually seeing in our freestyle tournaments some outstanding katame waza, some ground fighting action. And it's we allow them to continue on the newaza in the ground as long as progress is happening.
How do you determine progress in that context?
In the referee's mind, and also the two judges' mind, if you can see that athlete working towards something, he maybe has a position on his opponent. He maybe has hooked a leg in. He sunk a leg in. He maybe has started some type of wrist ride or working a lapel for a lapel choke or something. As long as he's working something, and it's not just a stalemate. When there's a time when nothing's happening. They just kind of stop. Then we call mate, get them up. But we allow a longer period of newaza to continue. Now, I must say, back in the late 70s, the 70s all through the 80s and the early 90s, that's basically what was allowed in judo in the IJF rules. As long as there was progression towards something, and if something was leading to something, then often referees allowed that newaza bout to continue. And when there was no progress, they stood him up.
In regards to no progress, what happens if during the match you have a couple of guys who are stiff-arming and not really engaging in the fight itself? They are being overly defensive and just not really doing anything. How do your referees call that?
Well, we have, as the IJF used to do, layers of penalties. They layers of them. The first one, let's say they engage. First of all, we have a specific rule written. I don't know if the IJF does. I don't know the rules that well, honestly. I do them well enough, but I mean, I couldn't quote them verse by verse. But I do on our rules. We have a specific period of time that the two athletes must make contact with each other, real contact, not just slap and dash or hit wrist. They have to actually grip up the judo gis. So if they don't do that quickly, the referee, or if they do that and they stiff arm and they immediately become very defensive, the referee will immediately. We'll give them 10 seconds to see what develops. Nothing develops. If they're standing there stiff arming, the referee is instructed. Again, we can talk to them, as our officials can talk to them. We won't have casual conversations or coach them, but the referee will say again, red and white. So red's the offending judoka here. So he'll say, red, you're stiff arming, get aggressive. You're stiff arming, you're too stiff. He will tell the guy. So, and that's a verbal. That's the first one, okay? And that counts as, to us, that's a Shido. That's a freebie. That's your free warning, okay?
Right.
And now the referee will judge that, give about another 10 seconds of action. If nothing happens, then the referee will stop the contest and get him back on the line and point to the official or point to the red contestant and say, Chewy, and that Chewy will now be 1 point for his opponent. So by his actions of being stiff arm and too overly defensive, he just gave his opponent a point. And he's in trouble. He's already dug a hole for himself now point wise. Okay. They start again. If he continues on, the next violation will be a 2-pointer. And after the 2-point, now that would be let me see, the first one, Shido, Chewy, Keikoku would be a 2-pointer. Or to Keikoku with 2-pointer. And now the next one's Hansoku Maki. And if he does something else, I mean, he's in trouble because he could do something else against the rules, and these penalties accumulate, and he could find himself disqualified. So now, he's really dug himself a hole by being defensive. So that really does stop a lot of that silliness, actually.
Does that approach to refereeing apply on the ground as well? As we all know, there are ways to stall on the ground, so how do the referees call that?
One of the things I always thought was, from the very start of my, for many years, I thought one of the weaknesses in our judo rule set that I wanted to change if I could, to encourage more aggressive newaza, katami waza, was people laying on their belly. What I would call when I was coaching kids, I called it chicken judo. When you're laying there flat on your face, hiding, hoping the referee will call mate for you and get you out of trouble, And I said, well, you're a chicken if you fight like that. So we always call it chicken judo. I don't mean to demean anyone, but when you lay like that and you're waiting for the referee to get you out of trouble, I honestly believe you deserve what you get, So what we've done in the rules is I've written into, just like you can get a stiff arming penalty standing up, it's equivalent down in a katami waza situation. If I have somebody, let's say red is the offending judoka again, if he's laying there belly down, not engaging and trying to get out of trouble, try to hide, the referee is empowered. The first one, red, get active, red, get active. This is Shido, get active, red. He knows he's in trouble. He's got his first verbal warning. If he continues to lay there for another few seconds, and not any active, and the other athlete, white, is trying to engage, turning him over, he's being aggressively trying to pursue doing judo, and red continues to be very defensive or passive. We call it passivity. He will get a chewy, but we won't stand him up because that'll get him out of trouble. So we'll give him the chewy right there on the spot. The referee will say, red, chewy, 1 point, white, and it'll go up on the scoreboard. And now red knows he's in trouble. He better get active. If he continues to lay there, he'll get a 2-point penalty assessed against him. And the next one will be a Hansoku Maki. So if you're genuinely laying there and you're just trying to defend yourself and you're trying to get back on a base and get out of trouble, that's one thing. The referee will see, red may be really trying to aggressively, get out of trouble if he can to, get from the bottom to the top. But if he just lays there, and you and I, like you just said, we've seen that happen. that athlete will get, penalties assessed against him. So we do have very strict penalties and very strict rules about passivity in Katami Waza, because we
I want to follow up with some of these different types of penalties that could or could not happen. What about things in terms of grips and grip fighting? And do you have specific rules on what kind of grips the athletes can or can't take? And, maybe not go over every single rule, but perhaps some that may be different from the IJF.
Well, we're pretty specific on the gripping, and we're actually quite liberal on the gripping. We were well ahead, I think, of the game with everybody in gripping. The only thing we don't allow are grabbing inside the sleeve or inside the pant leg, the cuff of the pants. Actually inside of it. That's often a stalling or a very defensive, passive situation. Or let me see, another one we don't allow is just grabbing the bottom of the belt and hanging on it in a standing situation, but you can use it in Newaza. But almost any grip goes. I mean, the Georgian grip from Sambo, a 2-on-1, I can hold as long as I'm actively, like on a 2-on-1 grip. I'm holding, say, my right hand on my opponent's right lapel, my left hand on his right sleeve. As long as I'm actively trying a throw, that's a good grip. I could be holding onto his belt as well. I could hold onto his belt with a grip. And as long as I'm trying, and what we instruct our referees, we train them hard on this too, is that when our referee sees, like on a belt grip, when red is holding white and he's got his right hand on white's belt, and as long as he's got that elbow bent and he's trying something to do with that arm, he's trying to actually lift for a throw, try to use it to actually throw his opponent. But if he starts stiffening that arm, I see that elbow go straight and it becomes stiff, and now we're starting to do a push away. That's obviously a defensive grip. So that's when the referee will instruct the offending grappler or the offending judoka, red, you're getting defensive, stiffen, work it up, get aggressive. So
now, what about grip fighting in terms of stripping grips and such? Because currently on the IJF scene, if the referees see you continually stripping grips without positive action, they will call a Shido on you. So under the freestyle judo rule set, how do you avoid, and I do think stripping grips has its place, but I think it could get easily a bit much. How does freestyle judo handle this?
Well, yeah. I think the IGF is on the right track with that too. We certainly do the same thing. When you start getting this slapdash stuff where people are batting away and the hands batting and all that, that's negative. That's passive judo. When someone does like strip a grip and go for it, we want them to regrip quickly. And if they don't, if they become passive with it, if they strip it away and they try to make space to get away, and maybe they are trying to avoid someone's move, and that's understandable. But if they're just getting passive with it, they're just stripping away and running, then that's passive judo. That's negative judo, and we're gonna penalize them, correctly for it. But again, it could be a Shido or whatever it may be in terms of their hierarchy where they are in their penalty assessment already. But you have to be aggressively going for a grip, and we're quite liberal with the grips. So, we could have a 2-on-1 grip. You can have both hands on the belt as long as you're trying to throw the opponent. You can have both hands on the same sleeve as long as you're trying to throw the opponent. But if you're pushing out, like you're wedging with your head, like you see in Greco-Roman, some guys who do Greco-Roman will come to do judo or whatever, and they'll do a 2-on-1 tie-up, like a Russian tie-up, and they'll wedge their head in the opponent's head or shoulder as just to keep him at bay. Well, that's obviously passive judo. We don't allow that. So he would get a penalty for that. So we really try to encourage good, aggressive grip fighting. We want it to lead to something. The grip has to actually lead to something. If we see that someone is just negatively, passively breaking grip and running, just like the IGF, we will penalize that heavily. And but again, we are very liberal with our grips. We allow the pistol grip. We allow just about every belt grip, as long as the athlete is actually trying to use that to throw or manipulate his opponent into a move.
And I believe you said earlier that contests don't necessarily allow for leg diving type of judo. So a referee doesn't say Hajime and then all of a sudden you dive in and
that's a no-go. We don't allow that. The athletes do have to grip up initially. They don't have to come up the middle and grab passively. they can grip fight. But if I want to hit a double leg like a Morote Gari, okay,
Right.
if I want to hit my Morote Gari, I have to actually have contact by gripping both hands on my opponent initially, and then I can shoot for the drop down. I want to say shoot. I was a drop down for the Morote Gari to hit the move, rather than from a 2 or 3 foot distance like a wrestler would shoot on a low double. That rule of having them grip first before they can try a leg grab, it really stops a lot of that wrestling in the judo gi. It has just shut it down completely. And we've had wonderful results with it, because we'll see people do big booming Morote Garis or, Tegarumas or like what's now Obitori Gaeshi, which is the old Carbarelli. We'll see that. And of course you have to lift the pant leg to throw them. And as long as it's the action of throwing, we see all those big throws in freestyle judo. And it's, I think simply because we've taken a real common sense approach to how to handle that whole grabbing the leg thing. I think I don't want to be too hard on the IJF. I certainly don't, because I respect their work. But I think they made it too much. They went overboard on assessing the penalties for touching the leg. When you just touch a leg and get a penalty, that just doesn't make sense to me. There's so many throws we use it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. In general, when it comes to being a spectator, I can understand why the IGF made those particular rules or rule changes, and it certainly led to a better looking match.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah, when you eliminated all that bending over and grabbing the legs,
in my opinion, I really think all they needed to do was get rid of the Koka and the Yuko, because Morote Gari didn't score very much in high level competition, and I think a solid Morote Gari is awesome to see, because it can be such a devastating move. But I think judo did lose something with these changes, and I feel that you may have a better answer here with freestyle judo.
Well, I thought it was actually a simple answer, and often the simple things seem to work best. And just by requiring the athletes to grip each other initially before they go to a leg grab type technique. And it really did. When I say it solved the problem, I am not kidding. 100% of the time, we will get, wrestlers who come in and try the freestyle judo rule set. They like it generally, but one thing they don't like, and they always gripe about it, is that they can't dive for a double or single leg. Well, no, this is judo. It isn't wrestling. So, and so they have to understand that they have to adapt to our sport, just like we have to adapt to wrestling rules when we do wrestling. So I think that's,
yeah, and it's interesting you make that point, because one of my questions, and I believe you've already answered it, is, how do you think how does freestyle judo test judo skill as opposed to grappling skill? But this was before I had an understanding of your the way you approach the leg grab, the leg grabbing techniques. So I think that's very, very interesting, and it's good to see that you've created a rule set that really does aim to test judo skill.
Yeah, that's the point of, like I said, it was one of the 5 primary points we wanted to do. We want to, and some people criticize us for saying, we say it's judo the way it ought to be. And that may sound maybe braggadocio, but my friend John Saylor, he helped me on developing these rules. By the way, he was some of the newer listeners don't know John Saylor. He now lives in Perrysville, Ohio, has a wonderful training camp every year. He was the Olympic Training Center coach from 1983 to 1991 or 92. He was a several-time U.S. heavyweight champion, won medals in the Pan American Championships, an international judo player. A serious injury to his shoulder really probably might have kept him off the Olympic team in 1984. And he's been a very good friend of mine for probably 35, 40 years. And he helped me. I would have an idea about these rules, and I'd call John, or I'd talk to my wife too. My wife was a wonderful sounding board, or Norm Miller, our AAU judo chairman in Milwaukee. They helped me round these things out, these rules out. And as Kenny Brink, one of my black belts here and instructors, I would talk to him about it. But the point was and John was the one that coined the phrase. He says, well, heck, this is judo the way it ought to be. we allow, by saying that, we don't mean to brag or say that we're better than anybody else. What we're honestly saying is that these set of rules allow a judo athlete and a judo coach to teach athletes a full and total set of judo technical skill, and they're allowed to use it. We don't allow kane basami or kawazugaki because they do cause injury. It's been proven to be that case. So the only things we don't allow are things that will hurt somebody, but we allow just about everything else. And so that's kind of how we came up with the name Freestyle Judo, because it was kind of an open approach to doing judo. It wasn't, a wrestler came to one of our tournaments when we first, I think in 2009, and he was trying all sorts of crazy stuff. He didn't quite get the set of rules, and he was basically trying to make freestyle judo into wrestling to suit his purposes, to win the tournament.
Sure.
And he said to me, well, you call this freestyle? That means anything goes, right? I said, no, it's judo.
Yeah.
The idea for freestyle is that, we want to have a free, open, I don't want to say a total approach, but as full approach as you can technically and tactically to winning a judo match. And so that's why we kind of came up with the name. No other names were really suitable. We needed a name to actually give it some identity. We knew that from a standpoint of people learning about it and hearing about it. So freestyle was, the best choice we could come up with at the time. So we've kind of stuck with it, really.
So now there's a set of questions that I want to move on to, but before we get there, I do have one last question in regards to the rule sets and stuff. How do you see the competitors? Do you see a lot of strategy from the competitors to try and take advantage of the rules? So, for instance, as I'm sure you're well aware, in the IJF, you see a lot of edge play. Which I can't stand watching. I know what you guys are. It's like, I sit there watching. I know what you guys are trying to do. You're not really trying to fight. You're just trying to induce penalties and stuff. Do you see a lot of that in your competitions?
Well, human nature is people are going to use the rules to their advantage however they can, no matter what set of rules it is. And, but what we've tried to do is, and again, the tactics, what's done on the mat, the actual strategy on the mat, the applied strategy, you're going to see athletes use it in a freestyle judo set of rules or IJF set of rules, whatever it may be. But generally, because again, the referees talk to the athletes. If they're getting too close to the edge, like you mentioned, line play, the referee will say to both of them, work to the center.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so we will we try to stop. We don't want to, like I tell the athletes before every tournament when I want to do a rules clinic with the guys and the gals, I say, look, I don't want to give you penalties. I really don't. I want you to slam each other for ippon. I want you to arm lock or choke or whatever. I want you to do good judo. I don't want to have to give you penalties. So don't make me give you a penalty. So, and allowing our referees, this was another thing I thought we did quite well, was allowing our referees to not engage in conversation, but to talk to the athletes, to get them to steer, like I said, to steer them back from the line where they're back toward the center of the mat, and then they'll be more fully engaged in doing other things besides trying to see who can walk each other out of bounds.
And I think that's a great way to go about it, because I know in regards to other sports in this country, for instance, I know in basketball or even in baseball and football and such, you'll have the refs sit there and say, look, you're in the wrong position. Look, you've got to stop doing this. I'm going to give you a call. I'm going to call you for a foul. I'm going to blow the whistle if you keep doing this. And, they don't do that with every single foul, but they try and enforce the game and the rules as the competition is unfolding. And I think that's a really good way to go about it. Instead of just letting the athletes just do what they do and then, not giving them an opportunity to correct themselves.
And also from a spectator point of view, it keeps the match flowing. It keeps it going because I don't have to stop them and then give a penalty or get them back in the middle. If I can talk to them and they can work back into the center, then the match hasn't stopped. And it is also from a safety issue too. If I can see, especially when we work with the children, in kids matches, if I see something is about to happen that's unsafe, we'll tell them. The referee is empowered to say, don't do this because, it's obviously something's going to happen that could cause injury. So we found that works quite well for us as well. So again,
and on the flip side, I can understand why the IGF doesn't do that, because oftentimes you got a guy from Israel fighting a guy from Kazakhstan, and the referee is from China, and none of them actually speak the same language. So I can understand the other side of this too.
I do too.
I do like that. At least for what you're doing, it's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, right.
Now, what has been the reception to freestyle judo among your colleagues in judo? Not necessarily the people who are on board per se. And I'm sure you have some critics and detractors, but I'm interested in what the response is, not just from them, but maybe from other people who don't do freestyle judo, but just kind of have their own recreational club.
Well, I get a mixed review. Depends on your point of view of what you think judo ought to be, or you think maybe some people have a mistaken notion that we're trying to do a new style of judo or whatever, and so they may come at me from, well, you're trying this. Who do you think you are? But they don't understand what we're actually doing. But really, the people who know me, and I know a lot of people in judo,
of course, 50 years.
Again, I know a lot of the old timers, a lot of the younger coaches I don't know so well because I don't get out that much and just kind of within my own realm of activity here. But for the most people, they've been really good reception. People say, I understand why you're doing this. The purpose of it was primarily is to development, grassroots development. This set of rules is a good set of rules for people to learn judo on and to nurture in judo. And then if they want to go on to a IGF level or a higher level of judo, certainly we make no claim we are the final authority on, or want to supplant or replace the USA Judo or anybody else. We are a definite development program. We make no bones about it in our AAU judo program, and freestyle judo is part of the AAU. And so the people who know me and who are involved in USA Judo or the USJA or whatever organization, they say, hey, you're on the right track. You're doing great work. It's good grassroots judo. We're all for it. And other people might have a different point of view. But I found for the most part, people are generally pretty accepting. And I'll say, well, hey, I'll try to recruit them, get on board. And I'll say, well, I'm involved in this. I do this, and I'll say that's cool. You have what you're doing well, and you're doing it quite well. Continue to do that. I'm cool with that. But they understand why I've kind of taken this route, and I'm not trying to be a contrarian or a splinter group or anything else. But I really think there's a need for a developmental program, and a great way to in our community of judo, our sport of judo in the United States, especially, and if we have a rule set that encourages development, then that's all the better. And so I think for the most part, we've got a pretty good reception from people. When people come and they have an open mind, or they just want to give freestyle judo rules a try, they really like it. I had a referee who was a fairly good IGF referee. He asked me, I don't want to mention names because I know how politics are and something you could misunderstand. But he came down to our tournament, one of our tournaments in Baton Rouge, one of our nationals, a couple, 2-3 years ago, whenever. And he watched a few matches and he introduced me. I knew him and we talked. And he said, you mind if I get on the mat and give this a try? I said, well, you're an exceedingly good referee. I think he kind of picked up the gist of what freestyle judo was about. And he got on the mat. He stayed all day. He reffed all day. Had a wonderful time. And he said, I love these rules. And I said, well, can we count on you to come back? He said, yeah, the position I'm in, I really can't do that. I said, I understand. He said, but I want you to know, these are great rules. You're onto something. I said, well, that's good to hear.
So it sounds like you have some like peripheral support from people within the three national governing bodies. I think that's a good thing that they don't look at you as some kind of a heretic or anything like that.
I think in some past years they may have, when they didn't understand what we were really trying to do.
Sure.
But over a period of time when they saw that that I wasn't making some play to be some big judo weenie or something like this. We were actually honestly trying to help judo. They said, yeah, well, let them do what they do. They seem to be doing okay. So I think that's the case where it is now.
So
situation.
does your club, does Welcome Mat belong to one of the three major judo
Oh yeah,
organizations?
we sure do. Of course we're an AAU club. We encourage people to get AAU as a professional sports organization. I think the oldest sports organization, certainly in the United States. I think it was founded in 1885 or something, and it has wonderful benefits of being AAU members, like club members, coaches, so on, athletes. But yes, we are also a member of USA Judo.
Gotcha. Okay.
Kenny Brink, certainly, I think just a few weeks back or a month or so back, he had the kids out in Reno for the tournament out there. They go to as many USA Judo tournaments as they can, and they do, especially our kids program, because we want them to get a full picture of what judo's about, and I think everyone should. I don't want to say you should just belong to our association, nobody else's. I think what we offer in AAU Judo, and if people go to the AAU website, aausports.org, they can see that AAU offers a lot of good benefits to coaches for insurance, sanctioning of tournaments. If you like a young man here, Mike Russell does a wonderful job out here in South Kansas City with his Triple D Judo tournament or Triple D Judo Club. He held a really good little tournament here yesterday, a little freestyle tournament using our freestyle rules. It was an AAU tournament. He was able to get the medals at a great discount from the AAU. He didn't have to buy them from the AAU, but the AAU has such a good deal on medals. You want to buy them from them because and they're really nice medals. So there are a lot of benefits to it for an actual club coach, again, for development. And I would encourage people to get into AAU Judo because they have supported us wonderfully through all of this. They provided the sanctioning, the insurance, the banners. When we hold our national tournament, they provide the banners and the medals and the T-shirts. These are all things that.
No kidding. Wow,
they absolutely
a lot more than a lot of.
Yes, sir.
Some of the judo organizations.
They're fabulous to work with. And again, the AAU is a professional sports administration body. That's what they do. I think 35 or more sports. Judo is one of them, and they're pros. They're very good. They have a national headquarters down in Orlando. If I have a situation comes up, I can call, our liaison, our judo liaison with the AAU, and we can get things worked out. They're very heads up professional. It's inexpensive to join, and to belong. And the insurance alone is worth it for a coach. I mean, it's the best. It's absolutely the best insurance policy in martial arts in general. And I would encourage people to do it. And they've been very good to us. And I'm a total backer of AAU. As the old timers, the very old timers like me, will remember when the AAU was the governing body of judo prior to the Presidential Sports Act of 1978, when it was basically the government came in and basically broke up the AAU was a monopoly over the sports. And that's when the U.S. Olympic Committee gained more power and really branched out the power to each sport. Like at that time, we had an AAU judo committee at that time, and then the Presidential Sports Act in '78 changed that, and by 1980, USJI, U.S. Judo Incorporated, which is now USA Judo, was formed.
Yeah.
And I was on the ground floor of that. So, but AAU has pretty much retained judo as a sport, and we kind of reinvigorated here lately, and last few years. Norm Miller out of Milwaukee is our national chairman. He and I work very closely together, and they've been very good to us. But yes, we do belong to other organizations. Having been in this game a long time, I've been in just about every organization there is, I think, and I've never had, I can't say anything bad against them because they all do their thing well, and they all have their niche.
What is your current rank structure at your club when it comes to promotions and stuff? Is that done through USA Judo as well?
Some of the ranks we do, if they want to, they can go through that. But we formed back in 2004. John Saylor and I formed our own little Yadan-Shikai, and I'd been doing that. I've been, prior to that, I'd be either JA or USA Judo or whatever it was prior to those years prior to that. But when I formed our little Yadanchikai, we call it the Judo Black Belt Association. We don't expect other people to join it if they don't want to, but it was kind of an independent organization. I'm a firm believer, and I'm a big fan of Jigoro Kano. He was a great educator. I think he was a genius, but he was an educator, and he approached judo from an educational point of view. And when in a history lesson for some of the younger people might be listening to this, Jigoro Kano was the guy who invented ranks. He invented the judo rank system, and all the martial arts eventually, became part of that too. They had their own ranks too, but the initial concept of it was just like a school teacher that he was, that he wanted to grade his students based on their performance and elevate them to a higher level. And as time goes on and things develop, we've got all these different colored belts and this and that, and the different organizations have their different standards. And honestly, from my own point of view, I kind of know what I'm doing when it comes to coaching, and so I talked to John Saylor about this. We discussed it heavily. Let's form our own little group and promote our own people. Our people know that maybe somebody might not recognize their rank, but we've never had a problem with that, frankly, because we hold really high standards, for our ranks, and we really test them thoroughly. If you get a black belt from me, I think you've really earned it. So that's how we do it here at Welcome Mat.
So I have a follow-up question to that, and this actually came from a particular user on Reddit. He made the following statement, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I'm sure this kind of sentiment is not new to you. So I would like to give you an opportunity to be able to provide an answer. So
okay,
I will read his question here, and I'd like you to respond when I tell you when
sure.
know the question. So the question goes: Steve Scott claims he is not making a splinter group or trying to outdo the other judo organizations in the United States. So I'm curious to know why he has created a belt promotion system or why he is using a phrase judo the way it ought to be. Both of these seem to me as if he's trying to make his own personal judo organization that he is trying to brand and sell as better. I feel like the belt promotion system is also in place to promote people that support the organization and rule set. I'm definitely not an authority on judo politics, though I will say I've seen his videos. I enjoy his content and thought it was interesting on YouTube. I'm not a fan of the freestyle judo rule set. I don't mind the competition under them, though. I'm not affiliated. He's just so he's basically saying he's not really attacking you, but he is. I did think he brought up a very fair question. How would you answer those people who say to you, "Well, you're just creating your own belt system, and you could promote yourself to 12th dan and give you the pink belt or something like that," so how would you answer those types of criticisms with what you are doing here?
Well, neither John or I've never sought any higher rank. Like years ago, I told an individual, my belt can't get any blacker. So there you go. But beyond that, I think I answered the question about judo the way it ought to be. I think that was really just an honest assessment of what we're trying to do. We're trying to allow the full range of judo skill to be exhibited and done in set to allow that to happen. So it was kind of an honest approach. It was just, I'm sorry if it sounds like we're bragging, but we're really not. We're just being honest about it. It's judo the way really you'd love to see it done, and
sure.
And so, but as far as rank, like I said, I've been in this game a long time. I like to think I know a little bit about it, and for my own students, I think I'm certainly capable and qualified to promote them within a certain level. We don't go out and we don't promote people to these high dan grades. They know they're, at some point, if they want to go on, they want to become some multicolored belt or something, then there are other organizations they might want to try for. That's fine. But honestly, a good friend of mine years ago, a mentor of mine in many ways, Bill Clark, he was involved in AAU weightlifting. And through the years, I've been involved in strength sports as well. I used to be one of those crazy guys that put on a kilt and do the Scottish Highland Games. I loved doing that for many years. So I was always around strength sports. But Bill Clark said to me, we were talking about judo, and he was asking me about the belts. He said, and he attended one of our judo meetings at the time, and this was back in the 70s when the AAU was still the governing body. And he said, you judo guys, he said, you spent 90% of your time arguing about belts, who this belt or that belt. He said, you guys live in a world of belts. And that phrase struck with me. I mean, it struck a chord. Because in one of my books that I've written when coaching, one of the chapters, I had a small chapter with the world of belts. So, again, as I mentioned before, I'm in Sambo as well. I've been in Sambo for many years. We have 2 belts in Sambo, 2 colored belts, and they correspond to the color of the jacket you're wearing. If you're wearing a red jacket, you're a red belt. If you're wearing a blue jacket, you're a blue belt. We don't seem to have a problem with belts.
Right.
And so that's kind of my way I'm coming from it. Yeah, we have belts in judo. Jiro Kano is the guy that invented them. But Jiro Kano was also the guy back somewhere in the early 20s. I just don't have my notes in front of me to remember, but he also invented the Yadan-Shikai system, the Black Belt Association system, and where a group of competent, qualified black belts can promote their students to fitting rank. So he also, in addition to inventing the general rank system, he invented a system, a structure allowing qualified people to do that. And when you look at the people who issue ranks in our country, the different judo organizations, how do they come about? They were basically Yadan-Shikais, black belt associations that went on a national level.
Right.
And sometimes, and we all know this is a fact, sometimes those standards get watered down quite a bit. And so I honestly believe as a coach here in my neck of the woods, I'm very strict with my students. They have to know their judo. They have to know exceedingly well before I'll put a black belt on them. My standards are stronger than the national standards, and I'm not saying it to brag. It's just true. And
Sure.
Because I know my people, they represent me, and I don't want somebody accusing them of being a phony or being unqualified or unskilled or whatever. But that doesn't mean they have to be all the toughest guy in the world, because one of my shodans who's been with me for like 30 years, he's close to 60. He's had 4 heart operations, I believe, and 2 knee operations and a shoulder operation, and the guy still keeps coming back. So, but he's a black belt, but he's a recreational player. Best. He's not a hardcore competitor. So judo allows for that. Judo allows for those type of people to nurture and learn judo just as well as the tough young 22-year-old kid who likes to go fight in all the tournaments. So we do tend to live in the world of belts. I don't want to be, I don't mean to sound in a harsh way to anyone and I know judo, the belt structure is very much part of judo. That's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is. Yeah.
And this is the way, and this is the best way I can deal with it. Because, I found that I really, I know what my students know best, and they do that. And again, if they want to pursue rank with one of the major organizations, they're certainly welcome to. I never hold them back.
Right.
Ken Brink, one of my, like I said, the head coach of our judo program, just got his 5th dan from USA Judo. So, we don't hold them back. We encourage them to fully participate in every phase of judo. And, so no, we're not trying to say we're better. We're not a splinter group. We want to add, we want to be a positive addition to what's going on in judo. And I think this rule set, just like, like wrestling, if you look at Olympic wrestling, there are 2 sets of rules for Olympic wrestling, freestyle and Greco. Anybody who watches the Olympics knows that. But what a lot of people don't know is, or they may know, it's kind of an unsaid thing, is that here in the United States especially, we have probably one of the strongest wrestling programs in the world, but the rules we use for college and wrestling are different than the rules they use for the Olympics. But what they do,
interesting.
They're simple. Yeah, they're simple. They're what's called folk style wrestling, or scholastic wrestling. The rules are simple. They're easy to understand, and they encourage good wrestling. The rules that we use in high school and college, like when you watch the NCAA wrestling championships, and I love to watch them every year, when they were in Kansas City, I went and watched them because I love good college wrestling. But those rules are different than the rules, quite a bit different than Greco-Roman rules. But the wrestlers who do the wrestling, under those rules, they can come up, and USA Wrestling has Greco-Roman camps where they take good college wrestlers and high school wrestlers, and they teach them the Greco rules. But basically what I'm saying is good wrestling is good wrestling.
Right.
And you just have to adapt to that rule set. And you can do that fairly quickly, actually. And we have some of the best wrestlers in the world. So I'm saying is, why is it such a blasphemy? Why is it such a bad thing for any group, whether it's my group or any group, to come out and say, well, we've got a set of contest rules that encourage people to do judo. And it's easy to understand. Its numerical scores are easy to understand. It encourages good skill development. It's safe. It's fair, objective. Those are all positive things for a sport. And so, I say, well, I can understand if there's some, pushback on, if we're not Olympic style judo. No, we're not. But it's judo, and it's good development judo. So again, I think a good analogy is what we're doing is to what's happening in the world of wrestling, certainly here in the United States. So if people want to have a comparison, that might be it.
So I got this other question from somebody on Reddit again. I got a lot of interaction. Now, I'm not going to read a bunch of questions that I got on Facebook and Reddit because most of what I had, I was already going to ask anyway. But this was an interesting situation here that somebody asked. A typical judoka and a typical Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy both enter a freestyle judo tournament, neither with past freestyle judo tournament experience. They each have a week to practice the rule set. All things being equal in terms of training time, athleticism, etc., who do you think has the better chance of winning, the judo guy or the Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner under your rule set?
I think the heart of that question is, which would be better in freestyle judo, a BJJ guy or a judo guy? Well, remember, it is judo. Number one, it is judo. And so, and again, it depends on each individual athlete, because I don't think anything's are ever really the same. Somebody's going to be a better athlete than the other guy. But that being said, if they only had a week to prepare for the rule set, I think the judo guy would have the advantage. Although I must say this, we get a lot of BJJ guys who come to freestyle judo tournaments, and they love it because they prepped. Because I rarely have a problem with these guys. Not rarely. Sometimes we do, but usually not. The bending over, because the BJJ guys, and I'm not slamming BJJ. It's a wonderful sport, but
of course,
but they tend to bend over quite a bit, and they pull guard and stuff like that, and that's part of their sport. So if you've been doing that for years, and it's an automatic responsive movement on your part, almost to the point of being intuitive, then you might get in trouble in a judo tournament, even a freestyle judo tournament where we encourage newaza, because we do encourage newaza with our rules. So a BJJ guy will like the ground fighting aspect of freestyle judo, and plenty of BJJ guys who've come to our tournaments have said, hey, I love these rules. If every judo tournament was like this, I'd do more judo, and that'd be great. But we also, but to answer the question, I think the judo guy would probably have the advantage because he's been doing judo longer. He's used to the stand-up aspect of it. And he would probably know how to play the game a little better, whether it's freestyle rules or IJF rules. It's still judo. Yeah. But again, I wouldn't want to discourage any of the Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys to try it, because I think you'll, like I said, try it. You'll like it, because I think you really will. Just get your stand-up game better. I was out last year doing a clinic for Scott Decker in the Phoenix, Arizona area. He's a wonderful program, freestyle judo program out there. And I had a really good BJJ guy, a really internationally ranked BJJ guy, come out for one of my seminars out there. And he was just a wonderful guy. And he was really, super newaza guy. His ground fighting was really good. In fact, he had a very fast pace. It wasn't slow. It was a real fast paced, aggressive BJJ, which I really love to see. But his weakness was, admittedly so, he said, my weakness is my stand-up game. He said, I know some good takedowns, some good throws, but but I don't know him like to win at a judo tournament. And he didn't know about, he couldn't use his hip to do hip blocks or taisabaki or stuff like that. So he would have to learn that. Even though he was a very high level BJJ guy, he would have to learn some of the stand up moves that we tend to do a lot in judo. So there would be a disadvantage to him for that. But I think he would take just a few months and he'd pick it up. He was a very good athlete. So I think I would encourage the guys who do BJJ who are listening to this, go to a judo dojo, work out with the guys in judo, or get a judo coach to come in and work with you guys so you can work up your stand-up game and get the rules and the stand-up action better. And then I would encourage the judo guys who do strictly IGF style judo, and they don't do a lot of newaza, unfortunately. They need to really start working on their ground game, because really judo invented, the newaza we see in whatever sport it is these days, whether it's MMA or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or even Sambo, it all came from Kano's judo. Kodokan judo was the basis of all of it. And, that's why I wrote the rules, so people would be encouraged to do more newaza as well as good stand-up judo. I had a very good coach actually thank me one time at a tournament, and he said, I just want to thank you for letting us do newaza again. I said, I'm not letting you do newaza again. I'm just encouraging you to do it. He said, well, thank you anyway. So I think if that answered in a very long-winded way that guy's question, I hope I answered it sufficiently.
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very detailed answer. And I think you brought up a lot of points there, and I know the listeners will appreciate that. Now, I got 2 final questions for you. Actually,
Sure.
I could probably just merge them into one. How can people help freestyle judo grow in the United States and throughout the rest of the world? Because I know I've received that question a couple times, so I'd like to give you an opportunity to explain what people can do to help freestyle judo grow, whether it's creating a club, getting in touch with an organization. What can people do?
Well, thank you for asking that. I'll give an advertisement here for freestyle judo then, but because again, I said earlier, the AAU has been very, very good to our program in freestyle judo. Now, AAU judo has we have both sets of rules. We don't have the current IGF rules. We have the older pre-2010 rules that we use. The AAU has 2 national tournaments a year for judo. One using the older standard rule set, the before 2009, that set of rules the IGF used, the Yukos and the Wazaris and Nippons, and we also have the freestyle judo. So we actually have 2 national championship tournaments in the AAU. One in regular rules we call the standard rules, the one the freestyle judo rules. So if people are interested in getting in freestyle judo or AAU judo in general, I would encourage them to one, go to our website at freestylejudo.org, and that's freestylejudo.org, or go to aausports.org or aaujudo.org. Either one of those will get you there. And you can see how you can join the AAU. And by joining the AAU, you become a club member very inexpensively. You become as a coach or athlete member. We have kids memberships, of course. They're all very inexpensive, I might add, considering other martial arts. But you can do that, and you can get the insurance benefits. You can get all the benefits of being an AAU member. And it is through the AAU program that we run our freestyle judo program. I mean, all our freestyle judo tournaments are sanctioned through AAU because the insurance is the best. The sanctioning policies are fabulous. They cover the person running the tournament. The tournament director, promoter has a lot of protections through the AAU insurance program. So I can't say too many good things about it because it's just wonderful. And so if they get involved in AAU judo initially, and then go to our website, contact us. We have a Facebook presence. We have the International Freestyle Judo Alliance, and on our Facebook, or Freestyle Judo or AAU Judo, any of those in Facebook. About 3 or 4 years ago, we started the International Freestyle Judo Alliance because someday we knew that this would start taking off internationally. And we've already got interest in Australia, the UK, Italy, down in South America, Bruce Fraser down there. So we've got a lot of interest from not a lot, but some interest from people internationally. So we formed just an alliance, not like the IJF where it's a top-down organization. It's still just an alliance of people to eventually form some kind of an international framework that we could have that. So we have that set in place, and someday we will, I think, have a truly international freestyle judo tournament at some point. I think it'll happen. We're seeing a lot of interest overseas, and we're certainly seeing more interest here in this country too. So we're growing.
There's a site that people who are interested in from different countries because they can't be a part of the AAU. So they're
correct. Yeah.
There's the can you repeat that again? It's the international.
Yeah. Well, they can go for Facebook. Go to the International Freestyle Judo Alliance. And we post a lot of training videos on there, like a lot of stuff you see on my YouTube channel. We put on there as well. We also have a Facebook page called Freestyle Judo or AAU Judo. But we've also encouraged them to go to our website, www.freestylejudo.org. And we have we try to answer as many questions as we can there. We have the rules. If people want to see the rules, they can go there and see the rules. They can just click on the little thing there. And so we try to answer as many questions as we can for people because we know that's a good marketing tool. And we do get a lot of people come visit that site. So there is interest out there. And we would love to see anybody listening to this, internationally. Please get involved. Come to our website. Contact us. There's no membership fee to join. The International Freestyle Judo Alliance. It's, we're not in it to make huge money or anything. There's actually no membership fee. Just get involved. Just start doing freestyle judo. A good example is a group in Italy. They contacted me and they said, we want to do freestyle judo. We think it's really great. Well, wonderful. Can we use your rules? Well, of course you can. Here they are. And I even sent them a PDF on the rules in English. They translated them to Italian. And they have their own rule book now.
Interesting.
So these things are developing, and so we want to encourage the growth, and I think it's going to happen. I think we're here to stay. Again, I want to make it clear to everyone, we're not trying to replace any judo organization. We're just here to add. This is just another part of judo, and that we can do again, the basic idea is grassroots development, whether you're in the United States or you're in Italy or UK or wherever it may be. These sets of rules really they're great grassroots, they're great developmental rules. People see that, and if they're allowed to do more newaza, especially we get that a lot from overseas, they really like it. So, I would encourage you to go to those websites or those Facebook pages, and if someone wants to contact me, they can contact me at stevescottjudo@yahoo.com. That's again, Steve Scott Judo with 2 T's on the Scott, and it's all one word, stevescottjudo@yahoo.com. And I get a lot of emails. I really try to answer every one of them, unless one of them goes to spam or something. But I try to answer every email I get. So I probably get about 10 or 12 emails a day on this subject. No kidding, already. And so if more people hear about it, I'll probably get it even more. So please be patient if I don't get back with you right away. So,
well, Steve,
and I would also encourage people go to my YouTube channel.
Absolutely, yeah.
Subscribe. It's free. It's free. It's absolutely free. It's go to YouTube and go to Welcome Mat Steve Scott, and that's the name of my YouTube channel. Right now, I have about little over 6,500 subscribers.
And over 900 videos that last I saw. Almost, you're getting close to 1,000 there.
Yeah, we are. We were really picking them up there. Some are better than others. I might mention.
And I love that your channel is, it's very active, and you really put out a lot of content consistently. And I gotta tell you, Steve, that I don't know how much online browsing you do in terms of different judo forums and such.
Actually,
like that,
not that much.
Yeah,
really not that much.
So there's
time.
In terms of the interwebs out there's actually been a lot of interest in freestyle judo, probably a little bit more than you would realize. So
probably so. Yeah.
So I appreciate you coming out onto the podcast to talk on freestyle judo, the history on that, and how people, and the rules and such. So this is all very interesting because, a lot of people, they may not want to read a whole long, entire website on it and such. So they want to get the, kind of the breakdown or hear it right from the, straight from the horse's mouth. So,
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, Steve, coming on the program.
Well, I appreciate your work too, Dave. You do great work, and I really appreciate it. And I thank you for giving me this opportunity to explain what we do, and maybe recruit some more people into our freestyle judo stuff we do. And we certainly welcome everyone, really. So I really appreciate what you've done here. Thank you very much.
Of course. It's been my pleasure having you on, and I think we can end the interview here. So we'll definitely keep in touch, Steve. And I wish you all the success in the world with
same
this.
With you,
and
Dave. I appreciate it so much.
I hope you get a lot more response from this. I got a few listeners out there. The listeners are I like them a lot. I'm very, very fond of my listeners. So guys, if you're listening, check out Freestyle Judo. Do that for me. And I might give you a judoinside.com water bottle. Probably not,
fantastic.
but you never know.
Oh, my gosh. You're a good guy. Thanks so much, Dave. Really, thank you very much.
All right, Steve. Well, you have a good rest of the day, and we'll definitely keep in touch. I'd like to have you back on in the future.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. Everything you wanted to know about freestyle judo just happened in the past hour and 36 minutes. So if you don't know anything about freestyle judo, if there's a question that I didn't ask because I was too stupid or something like that, feel free to reach out to Sensei Steve Scott of Welcome Mat Judo. As he stated, he already gave the contact information if you were paying attention. But if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to him directly, or you could reach out to me and I could shoot him a message and find out for you. Do all the legwork for you if you want me to, but that's unnecessary when you could get direct to him. So with that, if you made it this far, I congratulate you, I salute you, and I thank you very much. I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Train hard, stay safe out there, and until next time, I'm out.
Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Oppan Gangnam Style. Hey, sexy lady. Oppan Gangnam Style. Hey, sexy lady.
Come on, get out of here!